trials and troubles, I will be still surviving. Through my pain and times of sorrow, I will be still surviving. Be it family, stress with enemies, or addiction, I will be still surviving. With God on my side, forever will I remain still surviving.
Welcome to Still Surviving. I'm your host, Gigi Blackshear. Our guest has an amazing story of what it means to discover purpose through trial and tribulation. Please welcome to our show, Samvia Henry. Samvia, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here today.
Thank you, dear.
In the midst of helping everyone else, I failed to help myself.
Because their reaction is never as bad as we make it out to be in our mind.
And I know that it is not for us to carry.
I typically tell them the only thing you've got to change is everything.
Let people know that there is a life after.
A better you, a stronger you, you're going to see a fighter when you come out of the other side.
A overcomer, a survivor, and a victor.
To me, to myself, I am a conqueror.
So please tell our audience, who is Samvia Henry and what is your survival story?
That is a loaded question.
It is.
It's a lot. When I think about that question, I have to really dig in deep. And I have to say that Samvia is a survivor. I would like to say that Samvia is a purpose survivor. I'm here for a reason. And despite what I've been through, I'm here for a reason. And it took me a while to understand that. It took me a while. When I say a while, it took me years to understand that I was meant to be here. See, I was raised in a large family. I'm from New York and I'm the sixth child. So I'm the baby of the family. I am like the last baby, the last Mohegan. That's what they usually would say.
Yes.
So I was that child, no one really wanted me around. I was responsibility. People had to take care of me. My parents were in their 40s when they had me, so literally I was that oopsie baby. My siblings were not happy that I was there, and they showed it. They showed it. And my mother, she was very strict. My parents, they were married, so I was brought into marriage, which was great. But my mother was very strict. She didn't play that. So if you wanted to go out with your friends, my sisters were almost teenagers, she says, yes, take her with you. If you wanted to go hang out, she says, take her with you. So I became that child, like, come on, I gotta drag you with me everywhere. Everywhere I go, I have to drag you.
Seen as a burden by your siblings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I felt that way. They made it known. They would say things like, you coming, make sure you don't say nothing, keep your mouth closed, and you don't see anything. So after a while, I just said, Mommy, please, no, Mommy, I'll stay here. Mommy, I won't be in the way.
Don't make me go.
Don't make me go, don't make me go. But my mother needed them to take me because they were preoccupied. My parents were both addicts. They were addicted to crack cocaine for many years before I came into the picture. So I am a product of that. So that was also on top of me. I was teased because I was the one that was brought into this. So, my siblings, they were really mean. They would say things, you're the crack baby, you're this baby, you're that baby. So I kind of felt isolated within my own home.
Your own family.
In my own family. They would tease me a lot and they would say, you look different from us. I don't really think that you're mommy and daddy's baby. They would say things like, you were adopted. Daddy's not really your dad. And I'm just like, oh, Mom, he's not? Well, who is? I was like this child that was so I was out there. I saw life not how it was. I saw life for what it could be. So I would see things and I would tell them things. I'm like, guys, maybe we can do this. Maybe we can plan a family trip. If we get mommy and daddy away from here, then they will be away from drugs. Wow. And I remember my sister is the closest one to me. She's 5 years older. So she would say things like, listen, there's drugs everywhere. And there is? She's like, so just if we move here, from there, they'll find it anywhere.
But even as a child, you saw possibility.
Yes. Yes, I did. I love my parents. You know, my mother was very strict. She was definitely the disciplinary in the home. She spanked us a lot, but I was the baby, so I kind of didn't get the spankings and stuff. So they kind of like protected me a lot, especially from my siblings. My siblings, they became abusive. One in particularly, she became very abusive towards me, and she kind of felt like I took her place, kind of. So if she was being disciplined by my mother, she would come back and she would punch me. You know, she's like, "Oh, that's what you get." She's like, "Why are you doing this to me?" And so like this was repetitively, like all the time. So she did something, she was like a rebel. So she did things just because.
Yeah, she got in trouble.
She got in trouble all the time. And then she will come and she would take it out on me when she get disciplined for it. So I found comfort in my dad. My dad took to me, you know. My dad, I like to say he was my hero. You know, he was like everything to me. Like, it was weird because my dad, he was a full-blown alcoholic. I mean, I'm talking about falling down drunk. I would get off the school bus at 3 o'clock and Dad would be downstairs like all laid out. And I'm like, "Dad, get up. Daddy, what are you doing?" You know, and I knew it, but I kind of still was like, "Dad, come on, get up. What are you doing? We gotta hang out. Why are you drinking so much? Stop drinking." You know, so I was like that child. He tells me now, like, "You kept me alive," you know? So he kind of protected me, and we kind of did things that I remember like on Saturdays. I love Saturdays. My dad would go out and he would go recycling. We didn't call it recycling back then. We called it cans.
Right. We would collect cans.
Yes, collect cans. So down in New York City, we would go down to the Bronx and we would look into the big park, Yankee Stadium. We would go down there and collect cans, and it was so fun. You know, we would dig in the garbage and we would collect cans. So I thought that was so great. And after we would cash them in, he would take me to Burger King. So we did this for like ongoing. We did this maybe every Saturday.
And it was great because it was your time with your dad.
It was my time. Yeah. It was my time. So my sisters kind of was like, "That's gross." Yeah. And I'm like, "You guys, you should come. It's amazing. We dig in the garbage. It's amazing." They're like, "We're not doing that. We're gonna like look silly doing that. We're not doing that." And I found such great relief knowing that I was able to be a kid with my dad. My dad wasn't intoxicated, he wasn't high, and I was able to have that time and that connection with him.
You know, I love your sense of enthusiasm, you know, and that sense of possibility and still being able to see, even in what could have been seen as a negative situation, you were still able to see pockets of light.
Yes.
Of light.
Yes. And I remember, so as a child, I wasn't the best student, right? And out of both my parents, my dad was the one who did the teaching. My mother, she wasn't the one who taught us. She just was preoccupied. So my dad took that role. And my sisters couldn't stand it, you know? So I have two sisters, with my dad. So we are full siblings. My mother had 3 other children by 3 other men. So this was her 4th guy that she had, 3 children. So I would kind of have this relationship like, "Guys, we have to stick together. We have to stick together." And they were like, "Not doing it." I'm like, "Come on, Daddy's gonna teach us." My dad would teach us lessons and stuff. And they're like, "We're not." They weren't into it. But Daddy would teach me different things, and he would spend that time with me. And I remember as a child, like, reading was not my forte. But he would take that extra time and he would really teach me how to read. He would really take his time. And I'm just like, "Dad, I'm just dumb. I can't do this." And he's like, "You're not dumb. Don't you say that, you know?" And he would say things like that because he knew that I was just trying to get out of it. So I felt like if I pulled that hard, that would be enough for him to be like, "All right, let's do it." But he never gave up on me. And
it seems that even in the midst of his alcohol abuse and possible drug abuse, he was still able to see something in you. You know, and parents know, you know, for some reason you were that child for him. You know, and we say, "Oh, we love all our children all the same," but I believe that there's just certain connections with certain children. For some reason, you know, they get into your heart. And so it appears that he saw something in you that he wanted to nurture and encourage. And he also saw that you needed protecting.
Yes. I think that's really interesting that you say that, because of course my sisters think like, they favor you, you're the perfect one, they love you. And I'm just like, guys, I grew up in the same household as you guys. What do you mean? But I do see that there was a difference. I do see that I kind of didn't see my parents for their flaws. You know, my mother, she was highly addicted to crack cocaine. I remember her getting high in front of us, and that's just something that she did, you know. But those were the times that we were able to connect with her. We were able to conversate with her. And I just remember, like, as a small child, we wasn't raised in a Christian home. I remember praying. I knew that there was a God, right? But I didn't know that he's actually alive and that he existed within us. I didn't know that. But I would pray and I said, you know, God, help my family. I would pray this all the time. And I remember asking my parents, like, let's go to church. Let's go to church. And they kind of was like, why do you want to go to church? You know, and I'm like, let's just go to church. I kind of was looking for something, like looking for God, really.
Yes.
So I have to say that as a child, I remember having like a want for God. I had a need for God. I didn't know him for myself as a child, but I knew that if God somehow, if we can get his attention, that he would save us.
Yes.
That he would save us. And so I kind of navigated through life like that. And in school, my dad always told me, hey, if you focus on school, you can get away from this. And he told me that, and I said, okay. Wasn't the best student throughout elementary school, middle school, high school. I got to high school and the teacher said the same thing that my dad said to me. No one knew that we had this kind of lifestyle. No one knew. But I would go to school with that same enthusiasm. And the teacher say, Samvia, you know, if you continue to do well, you'll get scholarships. And I'm just like, really? So my dad had planted a seed. And someone, the teachers came along and was watering those seeds.
Wow.
And I said, okay. If I can do well in school, I can get away from this and somehow I can take my family with me. So in school, that was my goal. That was my goal, to do well in school, to focus on my school and my education. And then of course things happened along the way. And I remember 11th grade, you know, I still was being abused. My siblings, you know, they grew up, they kind of moved out, but I was still being abused. And I remember it was, I was in 11th grade and I said, I can't do this anymore. My dad had finally left. He needed to get help. He says, you know what, I'm gonna leave your mom, but I'll always be here for you. I have to get me together. And I said, praise God. Do what you need to do. We got evicted out of our apartment that we were staying in, so my mother had to move away. So they were separated, and in that time, God was able to get them clean and get them healthy. So I said, okay, God, things are going well. I talked to my principal and I said, you know, hey, what if I take night classes or I take some, you know, Saturday classes? Would I be able to graduate? How would that trajectory look? And he looked at me and, you know, this child, this student, like, okay, he says, I think that'll work. And I said, it will work? And so I told my dad, I said, Dad, they said if I do night school, if I do Saturday school, then I'll be able to graduate from the 11th grade. Wow. So no one believed that. They said, no one believed it. There was no one who graduated in my family from high school. So here it is that I'm the last child saying, I can graduate early. They didn't believe it. And so I remember things continued to happen along the way. And I remember getting pregnant. I said, I guess that's out the window. Pregnant now, what am I gonna do? I'm not gonna be able to graduate. And I remember my mother, she had her way of doing things and she just knew it. She's like, I've been looking for your cycle, it's missing. So you must be pregnant. Wow. And so as nervous as I was, and I says, okay, Ma, I am, you know, she's like, I made an appointment. And I said, well, wait a minute. And it just so happened I had no choice in it. So I had to have an abortion. And I just felt so sad inside. And I remember feeling like, oh man, But I said, you know what? I can get back on the track. I'm headed towards graduation. And things just so happened that I was able to graduate on time. On time. I got accepted to a couple of universities. I wanted to go as further as I could. As far. I did not want to be close to my family. I remember telling them, I said, you know, when I graduate, I'm never coming back.
Let me ask you, so far you've told us a great deal of trial and some dysfunction, sibling rivalry, and some physical abuse. What was the thing that held you together? What do you think you were able to draw on in order to not, because you could have gone a number of different ways. What was it that allowed you to just continue to stay in there during that time? What do you think that was?
You know, I realized that through it all, throughout everything that I went through, and as I was going through, I realized that there's a reason why I'm here. Although that there were times that I did not want to be there, times when I wanted to give up, there was something on the inside of me.
Purpose. You know, it's my belief that God has a plan and a purpose for our lives that's far greater than we can see. And when you look back at biblical stories, you see people that went through great trial and tribulation in order to get to that place of purpose. And sometimes the things that happen in our lives happen in order to develop in us that strength and that ability in order to be used in the way that He has for us.
Yes.
I believe He creates in us that strength of will in order that we would be able to be used at some point.
Yes.
So that purpose is what kept you in the midst of all of the things that were going on around you and the things that happened to you.
Absolutely.
And it's unfortunate that as children, you don't have a whole lot of control. You know, you're at the mercy of your parents and whatever their lifestyle is. You're sometimes at the mercy of your children, of your siblings, you know, in whatever situation they happen to be in. So it takes a great amount of fortitude to be able to hold yourself, hold on to yourself in order to move beyond the circumstances and situations of your life and still be able to find that purpose. So I applaud just what you were able to do, because again, it could have gone any different way. You know, just the fact that you were able to maintain and still graduate in spite of those that said that you were never going to be able to do it, or that you were not, that you were less than, and all of the names that you were called, you were still able to persevere. And that's such a great blessing.
Thank you.
So you talked about being at graduating, and that had to feel absolutely amazing.
Yes, it did. It felt like I had accomplished something.
Yes.
I set out for something and I did it. So that sense of achievement overwhelmed me, and I was so grateful for it. Although there were people who said I couldn't, people said I shouldn't, people said I wouldn't, I was there and I said, you know what? In spite of everything, I'm still here. I have purpose. Yes, and then I realized that things weren't going to always be well, but I didn't look at life like that. I knew that life, you can be anything. You know, I remember really saying that to myself, Samvia, you can be anything in this world. You can be anything. I didn't know exactly what, but I knew that I had the ability, if I worked hard, if I educated myself, if I stayed committed to my education, that I could be anything in this world.
That sense of vision.
Yes.
That was planted, that seed that was planted as a child.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's such a blessing that that seed was nurtured, you know, and that it stayed with you throughout your life.
Yes.
It's just amazing. It's just an amazing story.
Thank you.
So Samvia, let me ask you, one of the things that you said that, you know, you got pregnant as a teenager and that your mother made a decision for you to have an abortion. And I know we've dealt with that on the show before. We know that that's a difficult situation. And you know, in a lot of cases, parents make decisions for their children based on their own experiences. And it's possible that because your mother had some difficult experiences, she did not want that for you. It might have been her. How did that impact your life? Were you able to still reconcile that part of your life?
So I know exactly what you mean by then, because my mother was trying to break the cycle, right? My mother had her first child when she was 13. Mm-hmm. So she was trying to break that cycle, and out of all her children, I was the only one. Yeah. So she says, I'm not going to have this.
Yeah,
I'm not doing this. Yeah. You're set out to graduate. You will graduate. And so she did that. And at the moment, I was angry. Right. I was filled with anger. And I really didn't, you know, I went through a rough patch with my mother at that time. You know, a lot of things happened. I felt like she kind of abandoned me. She didn't treat me well at that time. Right. A lot of things happened from there. More abuse, you know. Right. Back then, she allowed, this is how my mother did it, she allowed my siblings to jump on me. So that was something that she was okay with. So I kind of received some backlash from my brother, and so that put me at a great distance with him, because I said, you know, I'm your younger sister. If anything, educate me. Yeah. I was always that child that, you know, I didn't need to be spanked, right? And I don't believe that every child needs to be spanked. Right. You can talk to certain children and they can get it. They get it. And I was that child. Yeah. I was very analytical. You can talk to me and tell me what I did wrong. And so I kind of waited for a while until my mother and our relationship, it took months for it to get back to where it needed to be, but then we got stronger. And I remember, like, during prom, that's when it was, because I had the abortion back, you know, in December. So the prom came around that following year, and she really was like, I want to do this for you. This is something that I've never had the opportunity to do. Let's do this together. And there, our relationship was able to be minced back together and stronger than ever.
So let me ask you, after all that you've gone through, all that you've experienced up until this point, what would you say to someone that might be dealing with the exact same circumstances and situation? How would you speak to that person? What kind of advice could you offer to someone that's dealing with similar circumstances?
Wow. I would honestly tell you, if you're out there and you're experiencing some of the things that I mentioned, or if it's even something that's remotely similar, I would tell you to stay encouraged. And as cliche as that sounds, I really want you to stay encouraged, because your current situation and circumstances never dictates your future. Yes. And what you go through right now, what you're going through today, is just building you up. It's building your character for what it is to come in the future. So as bad as it may be, as bad as it may feel at times, I want you to stay encouraged. I want you to stay encouraged and know that you have a purpose, that your purpose right now is being characterized by the situations that you're going through right now. And if you can lift your head up, and if you can believe in your heart that this too shall pass, yes. I promise you, from where I came from the hurt, the pain, the dysfunction alone, I shouldn't be here today. But I promise you that if you can look up and you can stay focused on the task ahead, that you will get there. You will definitely get there.
Samvia, thank you so much for sharing your story with our audience. I know within my heart that it's going to help someone. We're going to come back with more from Samvia in just a moment. We're back with Samvia Henry. Samvia, please tell our audience what's next for Samvia.
Oh man. Right now I had the ability just last year to graduate with my master's degree. So I just completed my master's in educational leadership with a concentration in family and child advocacy.
That is absolutely amazing.
Thank you. And from there right now, what I am doing and what I know that my calling is. I'm assigned to help women. I'm assigned to help women that's going through some sort of dysfunction, that's living through it now. Women that need to find their purpose and women that are living beneath their purpose. So what I have started right now, I started to create this program. It's a women empowerment program that does just that. It helps women to see the light at the end of the tunnel. It helps women to really find their purpose in life, to dig in deep, beyond their circumstances, to really see life for what it could be and not what it is.
That is so powerful.
Thank you.
And that's called taking all of those circumstances and situations that you've gone through and then using those for good. The things that we go through, and I know I say this a lot, the things that we go through and survive, those things are not for us. Those things are for us to use in order to help somebody else. Because if somebody else is going through the same thing, they don't know that they can survive. They don't know that life is going to be better on the other side. But then as we begin to use those things that have happened to us in our lives, and I mean the good, the bad, and the ugly, when we use those things to help someone else, then God gets the glory. So the things that we survive, we have to take those things and turn them into the word that you use, purpose.
Yes.
Because if God allowed them to come into our lives, then that means that He has a plan and a purpose for that thing. Even that thing, even that painful, ugly, hurtful thing, God can turn it around and use it for good and for His glory. So that's absolutely wonderful that you're working on that program. And I know that it's going to be a help and it's going to be a blessing to someone. That idea did not come from you, it came through you. And we're waiting to see that manifest because we know that there are people out there hurting women all around us. We see them every day that need that help. So God bless you for your willingness to then use the gifts, talents, and abilities that you have in order to create a program to help someone else. You're not selfish in holding it in and not wanting to use those gifts. So thank you so much for being willing to do that.
Thank you.
And thank you again for sharing your story with our audience. We know that it's going to be a blessing to someone.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I thank you. I know that if anyone needs to get in contact with me or if they would like to see what I'm doing, you definitely have the opportunity to go to my website. It's called gracefullypurpose.com, and that is purpose with a D. I want you to know that you have purpose, and that's what we're going to focus on, and that's what I focus on with women, is to helping them to know that you are gracefully purposed throughout everything that God has put you through, has allowed you to go through. He has graced you for His purpose. I am on all social media avenues, so you can go for Samvia Henry, and that is spelled Samvia Henry. On all social media outlets, you can find me.
Samvia, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We'll be right back with Dr. Deborah Eichelberger in just a moment. We are back with Dr. Deborah Eichelberger. Dr. Deborah, after listening to Samvia's story, it was amazing what she was able to accomplish coming from her humble beginnings and all the things that transpired in her life. How do you think a person can make a decision? Is it a conscious decision that allows a person to get to that place in spite of everything that's going on around them?
Not only does it be a conscious decision, but sometimes the situation that you're in teaches you what not to do. Because of your experience within that situation, it tells you, this is not what I want. This is what I want, and I'm going to strive to get to that next level. And what was one of the beautiful things about it is even in her own parents' dysfunctions, especially her father, they saw something in her that needed to be nurtured and needed to excel. So it's a sad thing because we see it a lot in therapy where parents have been abusive to their children, but then they turn around and love their children at the same time as well. In attachment theory, we call that a disorganized, disoriented type of parenting because you're getting these differing messages, but it allows the child to actually realize that there can be good in something, and hopefully they have it within them to latch to the good and not to the bad.
You know, in reality, we hear it all the time. Hurt people.
Yes.
But the blessing was that even in their dysfunction, her parents were still able to care for them. You know, there are lots of stories and circumstances and situations where the parents cannot care for their children because of the drug addiction and because of the alcoholism that's going on in the family. So she was still able to have a measure of life. You know, she was still provided for, and she wasn't just left out. Was still able to at least survive. So it's just that family dynamic can be challenging.
It can be. And I have to kind of go into the Christian side of my Christian psychology. There was a spiritual thing that was implanted in Samvia. The fact that she could recognize that the family needed Christ, the family needed to go to church. That's not something that was taught to her.
Right.
That was something that was intrinsically placed into her. And that is something that we don't take an account for. What internally a person has. What is a person born with? What do they personally bring to the table that comes out of nowhere? For example, you can have a family full of computer geniuses, but you have someone who can play the piano like Mozart. And you're wondering, where did this person come from? Are you even a part of this family? But it has nothing to do with who you're born from. It's what you are born with. And if we tap into those things that people have naturally happening
those
in
intrinsic
them, those intrinsic gifts that have been placed into them, and not force them into a way, but finding that gift and pulling it out of them, they can definitely excel the same way that she did. That in spite of the abuse, in spite of her parents allowing the abuse, in spite of the abandonment that she felt when her father left, though he left for a good reason, he still left and left her in a situation that probably got worse with him not being there. But what was in her from the beginning was never destroyed. And that's what she had to hold on to. And that's what we have to hold on to if we don't lose who we are truly on the inside.
She has something on the inside to draw on.
Absolutely.
Something to draw for.
Absolutely.
You know, we've talked a lot about drug abuse.
Yes.
And we know that it's prevalent and that it's common and that so many children are affected by that. What can we do when we recognize that there's a circumstance or a situation that's going on where a child is either living in a household where there is abuse? Is there something that we can do if we recognize that?
The one thing that we can do is, number one, we have to talk with the child. Give the child a safe space in which that they can express what is going on, because the chances are they have never been given a space to talk about their feelings. No matter how long it takes, don't expect them to talk on the first take, because number one, they don't know how to trust anybody. And adults have lied to them on a continuous basis. So they don't always know who they can or cannot trust. Number two, when that child has created that safe space with you, you have to try as best as you can to reach out to the parent. Not to say, hey, your child told me you're on drugs, you need to get yourself fixed. Establishing that relationship with them and finding out what from them is also happening as well. But the one thing that is always going to be, you have to be prepared for is the kickback.
Right.
I don't have a problem. There's nothing wrong. Why are you in my family's business? But you have to have that grace to flow into those areas. And if you can't do it, connect with someone who can, because you don't need to make a bad situation worse if you don't know how to properly approach those situations.
Dr. Deborah, thank you so much for speaking to that. You know, one of the things that Samvia talked a great deal about was purpose. And each and every one of us have been created with purpose. Our role is to find out what that thing is. God, what did you create me for? What am I here for? Find that thing and then focus on that. Because if you're here, then there is a plan and a purpose for your life. So if you or someone you know is struggling, speak to that. Look for that purpose, that thing in your life. And it might be the thing that you do, that you enjoy doing the most with the least amount of effort. That might be your purpose. That might be the thing that as you focus on it, that will carry you forward and can help you to get out of or change a bad situation into a good one.
And a point that you made, Miss Gigi, is sometimes you don't know your purpose until you have gone through something.
Yes.
That
trial and tribulation.
The trial, the tribulation, the trauma is what births the purpose.
Yes.
So don't negate the fact that that trauma brought you to where your purpose was. So a lot of people are saying, well, what is my purpose? What am I here for?
Yeah.
Then they go through a traumatic situation and realize that's what I was here for. Or we might have thought we were supposed to be going down a certain path, and then trauma comes in and it shows us, this was the path we really were supposed to be going down. So that's what we have to do. It takes a lot of strength, it takes a lot of support, but anyone who has gone through something that they felt should have destroyed them can turn that around into purpose.
Out of great trial and tribulation can come purpose. Thank you for watching our show.
Still surviving. 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 Still surviving.